dugsiyada Nuruddin Schools.
Welcome back to our video lessons. Today we're going to talk about direct and indirect speech in our lesson. Our previous lesson we were talking about essay writings and quantifiers. But today we're going to talk about direct and indirect or rebuttal speech. So what is rebuttal speech first? Rebuttal speech is used to tell or rebut what other person has actually said. It's a very usual function in every language. Direct speech or quoted speech, saying exactly what someone has said, is called direct speech. Sometimes quoted speech. Here what a person says appears with a quotation marks. There are two ways of relating what a person has said, direct and indirect. Indirect speech will repeat the original speaker, what the speaker has said, or the exact words of the speaker. We call it direct speech. But indirect speech, we're going to say the exact words of the speaker reported by another speaker. We can say formal aspects. We can find a different ways of expressing the direct speech. John said, it's quite hot today. It's quite hot today. In another way, it's quite hot today, he said. It's quite hot today, said John. So all these aspects, we can say they're direct speech. They're not indirect speech. Because you see these are quotation marks or inverted comma. All of these are reported in the same way, taking the usual word order. Yes. It's quite hot today, he said. It's quite hot today, he said. Searcher, all of them are reported in the same way, taking the usual word order. Subject plus subject verb complement. John said it was quite hot that day. So this is the indirect speech. But these three aspects are direct speech. So we see a different ways or expressing. It's expressed as a different ways. Indirect speech, sometimes called rebuttal speech, doesn't use quotation marks. We cannot use quotation marks. Indirect speech to include what the person said, and it doesn't have to be a word for word. So indirect speech cannot be used with quotation marks or inverted comma. When rebuttal speech, the tense usually changes. When you wanted to change direct into indirect speech, we're going to use tense change. This is because when we use rebuttal speech, we are usually talking about a time in the past. Because if I say, Ali said, I am sick, he didn't say now. But Ali said that he was sick. Because obviously the person who spoke originally spoke in the past. The verb, therefore, usually to have in the past too. So the verb should be past. For example, if you have a present continuous in direct speech, we're going to change this tense into past continuous. I'm going to the cinema, he said. Look at this example, for example. Look at this example. Direct speech. This is direct speech. I'm going to the cinema, he said, to the He said he was going to the cinema. So this is direct speech. But this one is indirect speech. So how many changes have been here? The tense is present continuous. So we change it past continuous. And what about the pronoun? Personal pronoun I. We change he. Okay, this is as a rule when you report something. This is the tense change. Whenever you wanted to change direct speech or turn direct speech into indirect speech, you have to remember the tenses. How are going to change to each other? So as a rule, when you report something, someone, he said, you go back a tense. The tense on the left changes in the tense on the right. So this tense are direct speech, and this tense are indirect speech. For example, he said it's cold. She said it's cold. She said it's cold. So this simple past. So this simple present tense. So we're going to change this simple present tense into simple past. We're going to change simple present tense into simple past. For example, she said it's cold. She said it was cold. So this is simple past. And this is simple present tense. So remember, whenever you wanted to change direct into indirect to this simple present tense, remember that simple present tense becomes simple past. What about past continuous? She said, I am teaching English online. I am teaching English online. I am teaching English online. What is this tense first? This tense is present continuous. So how are we going to change now? We're going to change past continuous. She said she was teaching English online. So I becomes she because this is the exact word of the speaker. But there is no paraphrasing. It's quote. But this is a paraphrasing or indirect speech. So I'm teaching English online, she said. She said I'm teaching English online. We're going to say, she said that she was teaching English online. What about present perfect symbol, present perfect tense? She said, I have been on the web since. I have been on the web since. So this is present perfect tense. We're going to change past perfect tense. She said she had been on the web since 1999 or since 1999. So whenever you have present perfect tense and you wanted to change into indirect speech, you have to use past perfect tense because it's very important. Okay, what about past perfect continuous? Past perfect continuous. Present perfect continuous. I have been teaching English for 10 years. I have been teaching English for 10 years. How are we going to change now? We're going to change past perfect continuous. She said she had been teaching English for 7 years. So present perfect continuous becomes past perfect continuous. Again, I have been teaching English for 7 years. This becomes, she said she had been teaching English for 7 years. So we change only the tense. What about simple past? Simple past. I taught online yesterday. I taught online yesterday. I taught the past of teach. I taught online yesterday. Past perfect tense. So whenever you have simple past tense and you wanted to change into indirect speech, this is the direct speech, this side is direct speech. So we have this tense simple past tense. So whenever you have simple past tense in your direct speech, you're going to change into past perfect tense. Past perfect tense had. She said she had taught online yesterday. She had taught online yesterday. What about past continuous or past continuous? Past continuous. I was teaching earlier. We're going to change past continuous, past perfect continuous. Past perfect continuous. Past perfect continuous. I was teaching earlier. She said she had been teaching earlier. She had been teaching earlier. So this is past continuous and this is past perfect continuous. So if you have past perfect, past continuous in your direct speech, you're going to change into past perfect continuous. Okay, what about past perfect tense? Past perfect tense, there is no change. When you have your direct speech, past perfect tense, you're going to change into past perfect tense. So no change. No change. For example, the lesson had already started. When he arrived, she said the lesson had already started when he arrived. So this is past perfect tense and this is past perfect tense. So when you have your direct speech, the past perfect tense, and you wanted to change into past perfect, the indirect speech, you're going to use same or similar tense. So there's no change in terms of tense. Okay, what about past perfect continuous? For example, this is, and also this is no change. I have already been teaching for 5 years. I have already teaching for 5 years. So no change. She said she had already teaching for 5 minutes. Yeah, I mean 5 minutes. So this is the most important aspect or point of your direct speech. If you can't classify or don't have any idea about how the tense change direct into indirect, there's a problem. So you have to remember whenever you are going to change direct into indirect, there is a different changes like tense change, pronoun change, adjective change or adverb change. But this is the most important. So again, whenever you have simple present tense, change into simple past. Whenever you have a present continuous, change into past continuous. Whenever you have a present perfect tense or present perfect symbol, change into past perfect tense. Modal verbs forms also sometimes change. What about the modal verbs? We know modal verbs can or could or will or would or should or shall, etc. So she said she will teach English online tomorrow. She'll. This is short form. So she said, I'll teach English online tomorrow. I'll. This is not she. Because the pronoun becomes she. When we wanted to change into indirect. So she said, don't say side. She said, I will teach English online tomorrow. This future. So we have modal auxiliary verb. Modal auxiliary verb. Modal auxiliary verb. She said she would teach English online tomorrow. Or the following day. Or the following day. So this is indirect speech. Because this side is direct speech, indirect speech, and this is direct speech again. She said, I will teach English online tomorrow. What is the indirect of this one? She said she would teach English online tomorrow. So will becomes would. Remember. What about she said, I can teach English online. I can teach English online. I can teach English. This is direct speech, not indirect speech, because you have the quotation mark or the inverted comma. So she said, I can teach English online. We're going to change into indirect speech and we say, she said she could teach English online. So there is two changes, modal auxiliary verbs and the personal pronouns. What about must? She said, I must have a computer to teach English online. I must have a computer to teach English online. What about this one? Had to. Must becomes had to in its past. She said, she said, she said. She had to have a computer to teach English online. She had to have a computer to teach. So what is the change? This is auxiliary verb, must. Auxiliary verb, especially modal auxiliary verbs, because there is a different modal auxiliary verbs, primary auxiliary verbs and modal auxiliary verbs. But these are modal auxiliary verbs. So I must have a computer to teach online. She said she would have to have a computer to teach English online. What about shall? She said, what shall we learn today? What shall we learn today? What shall we learn today? Okay. She asked it. This is a question. Question. You see. She asked it, what we should learn today. What we should learn today. So this is direct speech and this is indirect speech. Remember. So whenever you wanted to change this one, change the auxiliary verbs into past. Should. What about may? She said, may I open a new browser? A new browser. May I open a new browser? She asked it if. Why are you using if? Because this is an interrogative sentence. Whenever you have an interrogative sentence, you're going to use, especially yes-no questions. Not all of them, but yes-no question. When you wanted to use auxiliary verbs, like is, am, are, was, will, etc., we're going to use if or whether. Okay, she said, may I open a new browser? She asked it if she might, not may, if she might open a new browser. And there is no quotation mark in here. Note, remember, there is no change to could, would, should, might, and ought. There is no change. You can use present. Yeah. Note, there is no change to could, would, should. What happened if we use direct speech in this one? How are you going to use it? Look here. You can use the present tense in Revolt speech if you wanted to say that something is still true. For example, my name has always been and will always be Ain. So, this is your name. So, you cannot change if something is true or universal true. For example, my geography teacher said to me last year, the sun is a star. The sun is a star. It's still the sun is a star. So there's no change now. So my name is Lane, she said. In that speech, you're going to say she said her name was if she died. Or she said her name is Lane. This is possible. So this is possible and this is possible. So you can change this one. Because in our last previous slides, we we learn that present becomes past. What about this one? Time change. I have already told you that there is, whenever you wanted to change direct speech into indirect speech, there is a different change. Tense change, time change, pronoun change, adverb change, and adjective change. So this is the time change. If the present, if the Revolt sentence contains an expression of time, you must change it to fit in which the time of the Revolt. For example, we need to change words like here and here and yesterday. For example, if expression of time if Revolt on a different way, this evening, you wanted to change this one into indirect speech, you're going to say that evening. So this becomes that. When we wanted to change direct speech into indirect speech. What about today? Today becomes that day. Yesterday. What about these days? These days becomes those days. Leave the pronoun. I mean the noun. They cannot be changed. But we are talking about this interrogative demonstrative adjective, because this des, not this, des and those. So des becomes those when you wanted to change into indirect speech. What about now? Now becomes then, when, in the indirect speech, during the indirect speech, because this is the direct speech and this indirect speech. What about a week ago? Do not change a week, but change ago, before. So whenever you have the word ago, we wanted to change before. What about last week, last weekend? The weekend before, last, or the previous weekend. You have two changes. We're talking about last week. If, for example, and if on the last night or last week or last year, last, the weekend before last, or the previous weekend. What about here? We're going to change there. What about next week? The flowing. So next becomes the flowing. What about tomorrow? It becomes the next or the following day. So tomorrow is a future. So how many changes are we going to make now? Number one, the modal auxiliary verb. So will become would. And what about tomorrow? The following day. Good. The following day. She said she would teach English online the following day. Okay. And this one, she said, I must have a computer to teach English online. She said she had to have a computer to teach English online today. So today, I mean this one, she said, what shall we learn today? Today. What shall we learn today? We're going to change this one. She asked it because it's a question. She asked it what we should learn that day. So today becomes that day. Today becomes that day. She said, my eye open and your browser. She asked it, why are we using she asked it? Because there is a question in here. It's an interrogative sentence. So we're going to use ask it and if too. Ask it and if. Use of if, the word if. When are we going to use the word if? Or whether? Or whether, not whether. Whether, but whether. It's made for the interrogative sentences that can't be answered. Similarly, that can be answered yes or no. For example, Ali Ali said, do you speak English? This is a question. So how are we going to change? Direct speech. He said to me, will you be here tomorrow? Will you be here tomorrow? This is direct speech. So we wanted to change into indirect speech. He asked me whether I would be there the next day. So if you have will, this interrogative sentences, we wanted to change this verb ask it, because there is a question here. Will you be there tomorrow? Here tomorrow? Will you be here tomorrow? We're going to change. He asked me whether I would be there the next day. Okay, how many change? Will becomes would. Yeah. And tomorrow becomes the next day. And here becomes there. So this is quoted or direct speech, and this is indirect speech or paraphrased. Mother said to son, do you think to disobey me? Do you think to disobey me? What is the tense? This is simple present tense. And it's a question. And you have auxiliary, not modal auxiliary, but primary auxiliary. Mother asked son. Said becomes asked. If he, because son is a man or male. So mother asked son if he thought to disobey her. And we change me, her. Because me is the mother. So, and it's female, so it becomes her. Again, mother said to son, do you think to disobey me? We wanted to change tenses, the tense, simple present into simple past. We wanted to change personal pronouns. We wanted to change the sentence. It's interrogative form, but we don't use interrogative form during the indirect speech. So mother said to son, do you think to disobey me? Mother asked son if he thought to disobey her. Teacher said, do you know the exact answer? What about this tense? Can you remember the tense? Yeah. This tense is a simple present tense, so we're going to change into simple past. Teacher said, it's a question. Do you know the exact answer? Teacher asked students whether they knew the exact answer. So this you becomes they, because when the teacher is talking to his student, he's gonna use the personal pronoun you, because they are in the classroom. Do you understand the lesson? Do you know my name? Have you done the exercise? All this. So teacher said, do you know the exact answer? The indirect becomes teacher asked students whether or if. You can optional. You have optional. They knew the exact answer. What about, she said to me, what is the name of the great Makua king? It's a king, name of king. What is the name of great Makua king? She asked me, what was the name of a great Makua king? So this is direct speech and this is indirect speech. So how many changes can you feel in this sentence? First, is a present tense or present tense, present verb. It becomes past verb. What about the form, the interrogative form? She asked it. Because this is verb. She said to me, what was the exact name? She asked me this question. So she asked me what was the name of great. We don't use if or whether, because there is there is no yes no question. There's no it's not yes no questions. For example, do you speak or will you or not that, but it's whether or where or this one. When you have the question is whether, why, what, when, and how, we don't use whether or if. They said, what is the schedule of the examination? What is the schedule of the examination? They asked it, what was the schedule of the examination? They asked it, what was the schedule of the examination? He said to me, have you been to Turkey? Have you been to Turkey? This is present perfect tense. So we're going to change into past perfect tense. But this is modal auxiliary verb. I mean a primary auxiliary verb. There is a primary auxiliary verb. So if you have a primary auxiliary verb or the question is yes, no question, we're going to use if. So he asked me if I had been to Turkey. He said to me, change this one into asking. He said to me, have you been to Turkey? He asked me if I had been to Turkey. Okay. What about mood of sentences? Mood. Direct speech. How your situation, if your situation joy or sorrow or etc. Like I said, hurrah, I have solved it. Okay. Reported speech PDF assignment. So this is joy. Alex expressed with joy that he had solved report speech PDF assignment. So this is exclamation or I have solved report speech PDF assignment. So what is the tense? We're going to change the tense first because this tense is present perfect tense. We're going to change to past perfect tense. Okay, like I said, alas, I have violated the exam. I have violated the exam. This is sorrow. It's mood. The mood is sorrow. So we're going to change this one. Alex expressed with sorrow that he had violated the exam. So this is present perfect tense. We're going to change into past perfect tense. What about, like I said, how cool the weather is, not cold. How cool the weather is. Wonder. This is wonder. What is the mood? The wonder. So Alex expressed with wonder that it was the cool weather. The cool weather. We're talking about the climate. So Alex said, how cool the weather is. Alex expressed with wonder that it was the cool weather. She said, what a good watch it is. What a good watch it is. This is wonder. The mood is wonder. She exclaimed with wonder that it was a good watch. 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 Okay, indirect speech of interrogative sentences. Indirect speech of interrogative sentences. Following are the basic rules of direct and indirect speech for interrogative sentences or question sentence. Punctuation marks, commas, inverted comma, question marks are removed. When you wanted to change direct speech into indirect speech, but the sentence is an interrogative, you're gonna remove comma, inverted comma, or quotation marks. Okay, conjunction that is omitted. If there is a conjunction that is omitted, so leave out. Interrogative form is changed into assertive form. Yes. If you have interrogative sentence in your direct speech, when you wanted to change into indirect speech, the sentence becomes assertive form of sentence. For example, Ali said, "Do you speak English?" How are you going to change this one? Ali said, "If I spoke English," not question. Said is changed into asked. Yes, said is changed into asked or inquired That's the end of our lesson. So I say to you, thank you very much for your watching. We will meet inshallah our next lessons on the video. So thank you. I say to you, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.